Our podcast reviews well-known movies and contains spoilers. The podcast may contain mature subject matter and mature language. Listener discretion is advised. Enjoy the show.
Quiet on set. Places, everybody. And action.
It is time once again for the Hooked on Movies podcast. We continue the horror movie theme with the 1985 horror comedy release, Fright Night. With me, as always, are Ken.
You have to have faith for that to work, Mr. Vincent.
And Ted.
Welcome to Fright Night. For real.
All right, and I am Eric. I've just been fired. I haven't, though. I've just been fired because nobody wants to see vampire killers anymore, or vampires either. Apparently, all they want to see are demented madmen running around in ski masks, hacking up young virgins. Isn't that what we all want to see? That's what I want to see.
It's called Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
No. We don't want to see that. It's called every 80s horror movie that's out there. We're talking Fright Night. Ted, give us the particulars of this movie.
Fright Night, directed by Tom Holland, a screenplay by Tom Holland. It has a running time of 106 minutes, a release date of August 2nd, 1985, had a budget of $9.25 million, and a box office gross of $24.9 million. Had they released this closer to Halloween, they might have had a better box office gross.
Yeah, you would think it would have been released closer to Halloween, but yeah.
Yeah. Fright Night stars Chris Sarandon as Jerry Dandridge, William Ragsdale as Charlie Brewster, Amanda Beers as Amy Peterson, Stephen Joffreys as Edward Evil Ed Thompson, Jonathan Stark as Billy Cole, Dorothy Fielding as Judy Brewster, and the incomparable Roddy McDowall as Peter Vincent.
All right. I was really surprised when I took a glance today at Rotten Tomatoes and saw these numbers for this movie. Why don't you tell us those surprise figures there?
So, the Rotten Tomatoes, the critic score is a certified fresh 82%.
I know.
And it has an audience score of 76%.
Blew my mind, man. Yeah.
People like it.
They do, and so do the critics.
Yep, I do have two critics here that did not care for it. I have Nigel Andrews from the Financial Times. He said, the film tries to be tongue-in-cheek as well as tooth and neck, but ends up foot and mouth.
Oh my goodness, that's horrible.
That's pretty cheesy.
That's from a financial guy.
Yep. And then Janet Maslin, who we've talked about before from the New York Times.
She's a big hitter. Yeah.
Yep. Its tone is never comedic, and its horrific touches are more disgusting than scary.
I don't buy that. Yeah, all right. That's cool.
On the positive side, we have Sid Smith from the Chicago Tribune. I guess Gene Siskel must have had the week off. He said, Fright Night dances on a tight wire between satire and terror, glittered by special effects and a with it nonchalance. Of course, Roger Ebert from the Chicago Sun-Times said, Fright Night is not a distinguished movie, but it has a hell of a lot of fun being undistinguished.
It's not taking itself seriously, as Ken says. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So the first time we saw this one, I'll kick it off for me. Sunday? Maybe? Sunday, I think it was. I think I watched it. Yeah, first time I've seen it. So I'm behind the curve there by 40 some odd years. Ken? Cable?
Of course. This was a mainstay for me in the mid-'80s. I was watching this a lot.
Okay. All right.
You just like the boobs in the first half hour.
Well, that's every movie of the 1980s. That has to be in there. And I'll tell you, for this movie, it really helped, actually.
Token boob.
Yeah.
The 80s token boob, that's what they should call it.
That's right. TNA of the 80s. That's a mainstay staple. Gotta have it.
Oh, yeah.
And if I remember right, Ted, you're kind of a version of this movie too, huh?
Yes, I was.
Yeah.
Saw it this week, and can't wait to talk about it.
Well, Ken, why don't you tell us about the plot, and then we can dig in talking about this movie.
17-year-old Charlie, oh, you're so cool, Brewster, is a fan of horror television program called Fright Night, hosted by former movie vampire hunter Peter Vincent. One evening, Charlie discovers that his new next-door neighbor is a vampire who has killed 2 women. Charlie contacts Detective Lennox, who goes with Charlie to Jerry's house to question him, but his roommate Billy Cole tells him that Jerry is away on business. Charlie reveals his suspicions about Jerry being a vampire, and Lennox leaves. That night, Charlie is shocked to see Jerry inside his house, having been invited by Charlie's mother. Later, Jerry visits Charlie and offers him a choice: ignore him and his vampire activities, or else. Charlie refuses, brandishing a crucifix at Jerry, so Jerry tries to push him out the window to his death, but Charlie stabs Jerry's hand with a pencil, and Jerry leaves. Charlie turns to Peter Vincent for help, but Peter dismisses Charlie as a crazy fan. His girlfriend Amy, fearing for Charlie's sanity and safety, hires Peter to prove that Jerry is not a vampire by having him drink what they claim is holy water, but it's actually tap water. Peter discovers Charlie is right about Jerry's true nature and glancing at his pocket mirror and noticing Jerry's lack of a reflection, causing him to accidentally drop the mirror. Peter then flees, but Jerry learns of his discovery after finding a shard of mirrored glass on the floor. Jerry hunts down Ed, don't call me evil, and turns him into a vampire. Then proceeds to visit Peter and tries to attack him, only to be warded off when he's burned by a crucifix to the forehead. Meanwhile, Jerry chases Charlie and Amy into a nightclub. While Charlie tries to call Peter, Jerry hypnotizes and abducts Amy, who resembles Jerry's lost love. Charlie attempts to gain Peter's help once more, but Peter is frightened and he initially refuses, but then reluctantly resumes his vampire killer role. Entering Jerry's house, the two are able to repel Jerry using a crucifix through only Charlie's works since he has faith in its power. Billy appears and knocks Charlie over the banister while Peter flees to Charlie's house. There he is surprised by Ed, who attacks him in a form of a wolf, only to be pierced through the heart with a broken table leg held by Peter. Charlie is locked in with Amy, who is slowly transforming into a vampire. Peter frees him before she awakens and says the process can be reversed if they destroy Jerry before dawn. They destroy Billy, who melts into goo and sand. Peter is able to lure the overconfident Jerry in front of a window using a crucifix, which now works due to his renewed faith in his abilities. As the sun rises, Jerry transforms into a bat and attacks Peter and Charlie before fleeing to his coffin in the basement. Charlie and Peter pursue Jerry. The latter breaks open Jerry's coffin and tries to stake him through the heart while Charlie fights off Amy, who has almost completed her transformation. By breaking the blacked-out windows in the basement, Peter and Charlie expose Jerry to sunlight, destroying him and returning Amy to her human form. A few nights later, Peter returns to Fright Night TV series and announces a hiatus from vampires, presenting a film also about alien invaders instead. Charlie and Amy watch the program as they embrace in bed, but Charlie gets up to turn off the TV and glimpses red eyes in Jerry's now vacant house, but dismisses them. The end.
It's the red eyes from Amityville.
I know, when I saw that,
Right.
That's the first thing I thought was,
Yeah.
there's the stupid special effects that we needed right there. Maybe it's an homage to Amityville. I mean, this movie plays homages to a lot of different horror films. And this movie actually starts off them watching a horror film on TV, which is hosted by Peter Vincent's Fright Night. Charlie's being a little handsy, let's just put it this way. And
He's
I
trying
guess
to be a little handsy.
he's trying to be handsy, and she's making excuses like, hey, your favorite horror guy's on TV. And she's like, screw that, I want to get some. And he kind of guilts her into actually have sex, and she's ready to go for it. And then he notices outside the new neighbors bringing him in a coffin.
You talk about homages. It's very Rear Window-esque. He sits there and he's spying on his neighbors. That's a nod right there.
The director of this film, Tom Holland, actually did the sequel to Psycho 2. So that was one of his first movies that he's known for.
It's actually a very popular sequel.
That was going to be a TV movie until they realized they were going to get Anthony Perkins back on board to reprise his role, and they actually released it as a major film, and which actually put Tom Holland on the map. And when we say Tom Holland, we mean old Tom Holland, not the new Tom Holland that is Spider-Man now, just for you youngsters out there.
Different Tom Holland.
He's watching this, and she's getting upset. She's like, I thought you wanted to make love. And he's engaged in this. I think it's kind of interesting that this guy is kind of like a horror guy, but later on we find out he doesn't know much about vampires. When he finds out that his next door neighbor is a vampire, he goes over to Ed's house and asks him how to get away from vampires. It just sounded kind of strange for a guy whose favorite movie star is a vampire killer.
Yeah, that was a little off. When we talked about Amityville and the writing, I think the writing here is actually a lot better. I think the story here is really tight. There's not a whole lot of things that you can really nitpick as far as the writing goes.
Yeah, I would say the writing. Yeah, Amityville's writing is pretty lame. You're right.
It tries not to be too clever. It doesn't reinvent the wheel. It uses the typical how to keep a vampire away, garlic, stake through the heart, crucifix, things of that nature. It doesn't try to surprise you with, oh, here's a new way to kill the vampire. I think it uses the basics, and I think it uses them very well.
It pays homage to a lot of different movies, but it really does a good job in retelling Bram Stoker's Dracula. Jerry being, of course, Dracula, and then Amy is Mina.
Is his boy toy supposed to be Renfield?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the one plot hole I couldn't figure out. From what I've read, it seems to be a plot hole that a lot of people don't understand.
Even the actor himself.
Some people think that he's a golem, something that Jerry created that would explain the sand when he's melting. He's not human.
Well, he's not totally human. Because he does have a skeleton body. I mean, we see the skull at the end after he gets liquefied, I guess you could say. But it takes a lot to kill him. But a stake into the heart is what actually does him in.
Right.
So I don't know. The first time I heard Gollum was when I used to watch the second Halloween Town. But from what I understand, golems are also like frog-based or something like that. I don't know. It depends, I guess, on what folklore you believe in or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
It's above my pay grade, man.
Most of the people that were questioning his sexual thing. You know, wasn't questioning because he seemed like to be a boy toy, as Eric was alluding to earlier. I mean, we could tell that Jerry, the vampire himself, he likes girls.
He prefers the ladies. We know that.
Ted was alluding that, this is like Bram Stoker's Dracula, and the fact that he lost his true love. And then later on in life, there's like a reincarnation of someone who reminds him of her. So very similar in that sense. It takes things, very basic things from Dracula and other movies, and I think they do a very good job in interweaving them in and out of this movie.
I agree.
We talk about Peter Vincent, and I know Ted probably was going to bring this up, that Peter Vincent is based on Peter Cushing and Vincent Price. But if we see those movies, those pretend movies of Peter Vincent, it's very much like the Hammer horror films of Peter Cushing. They look very much like it. In fact, he's hitting the vampire in the pretend movie with the stake, and the blood squirts into the face. It reminds me of Mel Brooks's Dracula Dead and Loving It. He hits her like about 1,000 pounds of blood just goes like squirting all over the place. Not a very good parody by Mel Brooks, by the way. Not one of my favorites, but that scene is kind of classic. So
I've never seen it.
It's one of those Mel Brooks films you could take it or leave it.
Right.
I think it was like his last parody film. With Charlie, knowing that this guy is a vampire, he needs to tell somebody. He decides to go to the police. I forget the actor's name who plays the lieutenant, but he's also the same guy who's in Die Hard 2.
He plays a cop in like all those movies.
That's an unfortunate role. Die Hard 2 is abominable.
I don't hate it, but
it's one of the worst movies ever made.
No, that's the one. That's the one where they take over the church to try and get the planes out of the sky.
It's the airport.
But they take over
church too.
But they take over the church as their like ground operations.
Dude,
it's not that bad of a movie.
I've only seen it a couple of times. It's almost Caddyshack 2 bad.
No, it is nowhere near. Caddyshack 2 is horrific.
That's a true horror movie.
That is. Caddyshack 2 is a true horror movie.
Well, Charlie as a character, though, you actually do kind of root for him. He is naive in some ways, but the actor plays very well. He plays this desperate person who's trying to tell everybody what's going on, and nobody will listen to him. He plays that really well. And he really plays the frantic, manic part that's needed in this movie, because you have to have a protagonist to Jerry, the main vampire. So I think he did really good here. And something else that I had read while doing this was that Charlie Sheen almost had the role.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Holland said he was not the boy next door.
Couldn't afford him.
Because this is set in Iowa, so he wanted somebody more realistic and somebody that looked like the kid next door. I think the character's very well written. There is the part where, he has to go to Ed for how to ward off a vampire, but you can almost forgive him a little bit for that. He's so desperate to have somebody on his side.
I don't know if I can forgive him on that. I mean, for a guy whose favorite actor is Peter Vincent and he doesn't know anything about killing a vampire, and I get it that Ed knows, because Ed is really into a lot of that stuff. I just don't buy that. I mean, if they were powwowing together and talking about what they needed to do, that's one thing, but Ed basically was saying everything and he's like, that's it, and he goes, I'm afraid so. And for me, that's like Vampire 101.
I thought Ed was kind of teasing him that he didn't know, too.
I didn't get that. I mean, the guy paid him money to do it.
$8.
But one thing I do like about Charlie, and the actor who played him was William Ragsdale. What I like about Charlie, he's not a coward. He doesn't portray to be a coward at any time. I mean, it's one thing to be scared, which, when you're facing something like a vampire, which you should be scared. But he has, right off the bat, he has that courage to face this evil. And I really like that, because a lot of times those characters are like wimps and can't stand up to anybody. But at the beginning, he's just somebody that has confidence and willing to take things on. So I kind of like that about this character.
All of the characters here are really well written, except for Ed. Ed is one of the most annoying characters.
I like Ed for the most part.
Ed's really annoying.
He gets more annoying when he becomes a vampire, actually. When he becomes a vampire.
No, he doesn't. He's annoying from the very beginning.
I think he's better as a vampire.
Actually, I do, too.
Yeah, he's an annoying friend.
And they're supposed to be friends, but it's kind of a weird friendship relationship, because you kind of wonder if they are, how close they really are.
I think they're really close, because he walks right into his house. He comes over from his house to talk to him about the vampire. So I think they are like best friends. But I think their lives are a little bit different.
They're in different social class as far as popularity.
They're probably childhood friends that have known each other forever. Charlie, of course, has a girlfriend in Amy. And Ed is kind of maybe the third wheel. He sees Ed whenever Amy's not around.
Yeah.
I think Evil Ed is a pretty decent character. It was Tom Holland who wanted him to act the way that he was acting. Originally, the actor Stephen Jeffries, who actually was in a movie before this called Paternityfication with Amanda Bierce, he thought he was going to get the lead role as Charlie. So that he was like, nope, you're going to be this Evil Ed character. I think he does an all right job. I think he does a good job of bringing some comedic element when needed. Occasionally, you don't want your horror film to be always about horror and nothing to cut the tension. I think that's what Evil Ed is supposed to be. He cuts the tension. I think he does a good job of it.
I know what this movie's trying to do, but I prefer my horror movies to be all horror. The jokies kind of get on my nerves, but coming in fresh to this movie, I didn't know what I was in for. But one thing that it does really, really quickly is it sets up the cheese factor. Because they're watching that old cheesy movie, it's scrolling up the street to the house. So you don't know that they're watching a TV show. So you're like, all this cheesy dialogue, and you're like, okay, I get what I'm in for now. So the jokies didn't bother me so much.
It's kind of interesting they had those kind of movies, but then they put in like real movies like Scars of Dracula with Christopher Lee to kind of make it seem like that this could be a real movie.
Well, I'm sure that was done on purpose.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised they were able to pull that off, because I would imagine you would have needed permission.
A little royalty, right?
I would think so, because I don't think the movie studio owned the rights to those movies at that time.
I don't know what Columbia owned the rights to at that time. Amanda Bierce plays a really good Amy here. I think that Amy's character has the potential to be annoying, but she plays the character really well.
Has the potential to be annoying?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, you thought she was annoying?
Overly annoying. Yeah.
I didn't think that she was over the top.
I never thought that either.
I thought she played it pretty on point.
I thought she played it well for somebody who's 25, 26 years old playing somebody who's 17.
She was 27.
Was she that old?
Yeah, no, she definitely looked like she was in high school. There's no doubt about that.
Except when she turned into a vampire, then she started looking her age.
Then she looked like she was 27, yeah.
She looked a lot better when she started like a vampire. Granted, they gave her fake boobs. I guess when you become a female vampire, your hair gets longer and you get bigger boobs. So I guess
it changes color?
Yeah.
She goes through a complete transformation.
Complete transformation.
I like her in general. I mean, I think, again, it goes back to Girl Next Door, the Girl Next Door look. It's not the most beautiful woman in the world type of deal.
It's not the Playboy Playmate that gets out of the car.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Because she was a Playboy Playmate.
And it wasn't the girl that we see in the window who's showing her breast. But I like the look because it's a normal teenage couple. He's not like extremely good looking, but he's not a bad looking guy. And she's, not hot to trot, but she's not unattractive either. I think it works really well.
They're very relatable. And that's a big thing with this movie. The characters are written relatable. You can relate to at least one character that you're like, okay, I can see that. It makes it very believable.
These three main characters are playing teenagers. There's no interaction with any other teenagers at all throughout the whole movie. Right. Nobody in school, nobody anywhere. And I think that's amazing that you're able to get away with it between these three, because I think the chemistry these three have with each other doesn't need anybody else to come in and out of that circle. These three pull it off very well.
No, I agree. But there's one character absolutely steals the entire show, and that's Roddy McDowall. He's perfect for this role. He knows when to chew the scenery. Just campy enough that it completely works. I know Chris Sarandon gets the top billing for being Jerry because he's the lead vampire, but Roddy McDowall deserves all the credit for this movie. He really carries the entire movie, in my opinion. Every scene that he's in is engaging, and it's must watch. I can't say enough good things about him.
Wow, maybe I was watching a different movie.
With Roddy McDowall, I think what it does, it brings legitimacy to the movie. Because you're bringing an actor of his caliber, somebody who is well known, especially from Planet of the Apes. He's been in the business since he was a kid. He was one of those child actors that actually succeeded throughout his career. Like I said earlier, I think he does a great job of portraying a Peter Cushing type of character from the Hammer horror films, especially when he's playing Van Helsing in all those movies against Christopher Lee's Dracula. Tom Holland, of course, wanted Vincent Price, but Vincent Price was just too old and frail at that particular time to do this type of movie. But you could see his love for horror films in this movie, especially with the creation of Peter Vincent. And you're right, he steals every scene that he's in. And I think, I was talking to Ted about this earlier. So one of my favorite shows growing up as a kid, especially in the mid-'80s, was Svengoolie. At that time it was called Son of Svengoolie. It would show horror movies, and Vincent Price would be, one of those type of movies. And it really brought me into the genre of that type of movie. And so when you introduced me to a character like Son of Svengoolie, it just attracted me to this movie even more and made me appreciate this role. I like he's a scaredy cat, but I think the way he gains confidence is kind of realistic. And considering we're doing a fantasy horror film, giving him that strength that he needs. And I think that comes also from the fact that Charlie is very strong, and that allows Peter Vincent to kind of learn from Charlie. He's very protective of Charlie. Every time Charlie's willing to go do battle with the vampire, Peter is right there and kind of puts him in the back and takes lead on it. When Peter finds out that Jerry is a vampire, when he sees no reflection in the mirror, he gets scared at first, but his instinct is to get the kids out.
Right.
And I think that shows us that he is brave, that he can be brave. So that when he is brave later on, it doesn't come out of nowhere. right off the bat, he doesn't hightail himself out right away. He makes sure that the kids are safe first before they get out. And that's what I like about this character.
You didn't care for his character, Eric?
I'm just saying, you guys are talking about this movie like it's like The Godfather or something.
Oh,
It's
no.
It's just kind of funny how you're just like.
It's campy. It's
No,
no doubt
I know.
campy.
I'm sorry. It's just kind of funny. I'm just like because I don't see any of this that you guys are talking about. I can't get past how campy and how mid 80s and how it's a fun movie that doesn't really take itself seriously. It's like a Meatballs. It's just there.
But
Yeah,
Meatballs was fun too. So-
But yes, but
Yeah.
Meatballs is not The Godfather, is what I'm saying. I mean,
yeah,
we
no.
can sit here and analyze the characters of Meatballs, but they're they're simpletons, and that's really what these characters are is simpletons.
I don't think they're
I wouldn't
simpletons.
go. I wouldn't go that far.
But simpletons in a good way,
Yeah, no. The movie never takes itself seriously, and
which
that's
is the best part of the movie is that it doesn't
Yeah.
take itself seriously.
when looking at the characters, I kind of have to look at it from just experience and just seeing other movies and just comparing it to like what other things that I've seen. And Roddy McDowall's performance here is really, really good.
No, I think he just needs a paycheck.
Wow,
Yeah, no, I
That
think
from every-
Sarandon. I think Sarandon's role is very good.
yeah,
Oh, he's definitely a really good vampire. My mom used to call him the sexy vampire when she used to watch this with me in the mid 80s. She really liked Chris Sarandon. That's what you liked about Jerry is he's an up-to-date version. He's an 80s vampire. He's not your old school vampire like Bela Lugosi.
And
He's got his own
he's
style.
not George Hamilton.
What they wanted to get away from was that vampires were starting to be making fun out of. We talked about this earlier. Vampires were starting to be pushed away, and now we're starting to get the slasher films. And
Right.
so Tom Holland wanted to bring back horror that he loved growing up as a kid. One of the fun things about Chris Sarandon's character, Jerry, is he likes to eat fruit, apples, oranges. The reason why he does that is he told Tom Holland that he is a fruit bat. And so he decided to go with it, and that's why you see him. First thing he wants to eat is an apple.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's little nuances like that make the movie. Chris Sarandon is really good here. He prototypical 80s suave guy.
Yeah.
In a very, very tame way. He's almost kind of like Patrick Bateman from American Psycho. He's completely typical 80s.
Yes,
And,
I can see that.
And we talk about 80s horror and the cheese factor because it's Halloween. I watched Creepshow again.
Oh, I love Creepshow.
Yeah. Now, Tom Savini, he was the special effects person as far as the 80s go, as far as horror. I mean, he did Dawn of the Dead, and he's become extremely famous. One of his proteges is Greg Nicotero, who was famously one of the showrunners for The Walking Dead, who in his own right is one of the great special effects artists. I think that's one of the places that this movie lacks. I know Ken's going to probably bring up the fact that they did have the guy from Ghostbusters that did some things on here and actually designed kind of the shark look that the vampires have. I didn't really kind of dig that. That's one thing that I really didn't necessarily care for was some of the special effects. The makeup too was kind of cheese.
Little bit, yes.
I can look past it. I just think if they would have added somebody of Tom Savini's caliber, I think it could have been better.
I'm still looking at this as 1985, and the guy that we're mentioning is Richard Edlund. He worked on Ghostbusters. There's some things that I think work here. We're also looking at, like I said, mid 80s. We don't have contact lenses. They actually have to put glass eyes into these people's eyes, and it's very uncomfortable. And they have to paint them, and I think they have to do some kind of other thing so it doesn't really mess their eye up. You got to be very careful with some of the stuff that they were doing on this set because there are some real horror stories on the set about things that they try to do, makeshift type of deals to make things work. It's one thing to do makeshift things in a sci-fi like Star Wars, right? But when you have a horror film and you're dealing with blood and guts and all that, you're dealing with a lot more chemicals and things of that nature, which things can go very wrong if you don't use the right stuff.
Here's the thing, for a horror movie, there's not a lot of blood.
No, there really isn't.
Not a lot, but even when he bites a girl, you don't see any blood when it comes up.
The only blood you see is from Amy as the 3 streaks of blood run down her back.
Right. It's very tamed with the blood, but there is a lot of transformations. Jerry's is the best. I kind of enjoy seeing Jerry transform in and out as a vampire, especially when he's going to that next level, not fully grossed out, worst looking vampire ever type of look, but that next tier where he's kind of just doesn't look like himself.
They should have left it right there.
I agree. I think they went a little overboard on some of the vampire look, but again, let's look at what we just said. This movie doesn't take itself too seriously.
Right.
So it almost kind of plays for comic book effect, right? I could actually see some of this look on a comic book page. I think that's what they're going for here, is more of a comic book horror type of feel. And also we have to look at the cheesy effects of horror movies over the last 20 years coming up into this. I mean, we have some really bad special effects. Look at some of the horror movies from the 70s.
The 70s is really considered a dead point for horror. Outside of like what we talked about, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre that changed the game. I mean, there's a reason that the game needed to be changed. Because the late 60s and early 70s, it was a very, very down era for horror.
I think the performances, though, kind of make it okay that the special effects are, I think they're mediocre. I kind of agree. I know I listened to a bunch of behind the scenes with this movie, and they're so proud of some of the horror effects that they created. And I'm thinking, not so much. There are a couple things here and there that worked out, but it's the performances. Like Chris Sarandon's Jerry, for instance, he gives Charlie a way out. You know, it gives him a choice to forget about him. He doesn't necessarily kill just for killing's sake. In fact, he gives Ed a choice. I don't know if he actually turns Ed to a vampire against his will. He offers him the opportunity to take his hand, and actually,
he seduced him. He did.
I think Ed is, as we stated earlier, Ed is kind of like a loner, and the only friend he has is Charlie. But Charlie has Amy, so where does that leave Ed if Charlie and Amy's relationship starts to grow? Leaves Ed by himself, and it sounds like Ed has struggled with school, with people
picking on him. And he has no self-esteem either, yeah.
So I think he says the right things, but what I love is when he does turn Ed into a vampire, he uses his jacket like Lugosi would use his cape.
Right.
And puts it over, and that's another homage to the classic Dracula. And
right.
It's just those little homages here and there that make me go, that is cool. I appreciate that, because I'm asking why he's wearing the jacket that he's wearing. Well, he's wearing it because he needs to do that.
It's
to play homage
It's a cape, sure.
Yeah. I love Chris Sarandon here. He's just so cool. He's not a killer for killer's sake. I kind of almost wish there was a little bit more of Jerry Danridge. You know, I wouldn't mind a prequel before this, just to kind of find out more about him. The only character that actually I don't really care for is Billy Cole. He's kind of lame. Nothing against the actor Jonathan Stark who played him, but there's not much for him to do than just kind of bully Charlie around whenever he sees Charlie. Charlie's going to go into the cellar and he goes, "Hey kid, what are you doing?" But then when Charlie comes in the house with everybody, you see Billy Cole, he's just kind of standing next to him every single time he gets, intimidating him throughout the whole film. But outside of that, there's really nothing interesting about Billy Cole, except he might be Jerry's gay lover or something like that. We just don't know about that.
We'll just call him Boy Toy.
It's been brought up, and I read some stuff too like that, but I never got that impression that they were.
I don't think they are, but
he may have been human at one point, but he's more like Jerry's pawn, like Renfield was.
Yeah.
And I think he plays it okay.
There's not much there for him.
It's not groundbreaking or anything like that, but for what he does, I think he does pretty good. I think that he has some very sarcastic moments that I do like.
I think he's a comedian, and it comes off to me being really stiff. This is the one part I think could have been written better. Maybe give us a little bit more of a Renfield type of vibe. Maybe him eating a bug or something to that extent.
Let's be honest, if we're talking about who played Renfield best,
Well, Artie Lang.
Tom Waits in Bram Stoker's Dracula by Francis Ford Coppola, he steals that like hands down.
You don't like Artie? Was it Artie Lang? Or no? It's Artie Johnson.
Artie Johnson from Laughing.
Yeah, from Laughing.
Yes.
He plays Renfield.
Yeah,
yes.
no.
Yeah,
Richard Benjamin
that's
plays. Yeah.
I don't know, Ted. Have you ever seen Love at First Bite?
No.
Oh, you gotta
never
see that movie. That's a movie that doesn't take itself seriously either. It's George Hamilton is Dracula in Disco 1979.
Yeah,
It's good.
I can't. No, I can't.
A tan Dracula.
A very tan Dracula. Yes, it's one of my favorites. Actually, it is a great movie.
Wow.
And Artie Johnson plays Renfield, and Richard Benjamin plays his nemesis, his Van Helsing character, Dr. Rosenberg. It's a comedy. It is a funny movie, actually.
Yeah.
You know, if we talk about scenes, the scene where they try to prove that Jerry is a vampire is probably one of my favorite scenes in the movie. First of all, the inside of the house is awesome. I love the staircase, and I love, the stained glass window?
Stained glass window, yeah, that's pretty cool.
It gives you the feel of a house that Dracula would live in, right? But I love the test. I love the little cleverness of using the prop mirror to determine that Jerry was a vampire. That, and of course, coming back to the house later on, I think the house is very underrated. I think the house is kind of a character in itself. When they get there the first time, Peter Vincent's like, so where is it? And he points to that house, and he's like, oh, I see what you mean. But it's once they get into the house, I think it's a perfect setting. I think it's really enjoyable.
The house is set up really cool. It's almost like a castle. There's a lot of really interesting artifacts and stuff that are spread around. Now, if we're talking about something that I did have a problem with, okay, Amy gets turned into a vampire. And the solution is that they're supposed to kill Jerry before dawn.
The head vampire, right?
The head vampire who turned her.
Yeah, but dawn already came.
It's already dawn when they murdered Jerry. So why doesn't Amy stay a vampire?
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun.
That's where I had the problem.
I agree with you. Like if he would have said in 24 hours or something like that, why?
Right.
Don't say dawn,
but,
or sunset the next night, that makes more sense, right? Because she was turned after sunset because late at night when she was turned. Why does it take her a while to become a vampire, but Ed becomes a vampire right away?
I don't think he sucked out all of her blood.
But why is the question? There's no explanation as to why it takes a while for that to happen. I mean, is it because when he did it to Ed was a willing participant, where maybe she's fighting it?
Right, that's probably that as well, yeah.
We'll work with that.
That's the one major problem that I had. But it didn't ruin the entire experience. But it's just one of those wacky things that's like, okay, you guys are pushing it here with this before dawn, but the sunlight's what kills Jerry. It's like, okay.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me either, but I do love the whole battle between good and evil throughout the last 20 minutes of the film.
Except when Jerry turns into the bat.
I actually like the bat. I actually do think the bat's not bad.
Oh, the bat is stupid.
I
agree with Ted.
It looks so fake.
It does. Little Jerry head on it. I thought that was a little over the top, but that's fine.
I really didn't mind the bat. What I liked the most, though, was seeing Peter Vincent not be able to use the cross to defend off Jerry at first, but then coming back with that confidence in the plot, it says mislead Jerry into being behind the window.
Isn't the faith, though? Isn't it you're supposed to have faith in God with the cross, not the
You have
faith
to have
in
the faith in
you?
I think you have to have faith in the cross. If you go by, and Ted's probably better with this than I am.
Are you a vampire slayer, Ted?
Yes,
Ted's
I
a
am.
vampire
Oh,
slayer.
beautiful. Ted the Vampire Slayer.
I mean, it's my knowledge that depending on what version of Dracula you believe in, that Dracula made a deal with the devil and is at odds with Jesus and the Catholic Church or whatever the case may be. And that's why the cross is something that he fears. I don't know if I'm explaining it very well because I didn't really do much research on it before I came here.
Maybe we should
I used
ask
to know more.
Ed Evil about that.
When Peter Vincent uses the cross on Ed or on Amy, it works instantly. But with Jerry, it doesn't work instantly. He has to believe in it more.
Because he's scared, yeah. In this movie, it's used more as a fear type thing, where if you don't have faith in yourself, almost, then the cross doesn't work. It's almost used as a test for the character, if they have faith in themselves, that the cross will work. It's not necessarily the symbol like it's used in some of the other vampire movies. The definitive story, I mean, of Bram Stoker's Dracula is that he went to war, he won the battle, but his enemies sent word back to his castle that he had been killed in battle. And Mina throws herself from the castle and commits suicide. And when Vlad comes back, he finds her body and she's laying in state. And the priest tells him that she can never enter the kingdom of heaven. There was a period of time back in the 1800s and early 1900s.
No vampires allowed.
Suicide was considered.
Suicide was considered murder. You weren't allowed into the kingdom of heaven. That causes Vlad to renounce the church. That's the more serious tone that's set, of course, and that's the story that's told in Bram Stoker's Dracula by Francis Ford Coppola, which I wish we could take Keanu Reeves now and put him in Bram Stoker's Dracula then, rather than that Keanu Reeves from that period of time.
The Bill and Ted version.
In Bram Stoker's Dracula. But that's a whole debate for when we do cover because that's one of my favorite horror movies.
Really?
I love Bram Stoker. I love Bram Stoker's Dracula.
I'm not a big fan of that particular movie, but we'll end up doing it eventually.
I love Gary Oldman. Oldman
he's very good
is awesome.
too.
Well,
he's
Gary
really
Oldman's good, but I think the Keanu Reeves kind of turns me off on it. I think
I have to ignore it.
It's hard to ignore when he's one of the main characters. One more character I wanted to touch base on it because it's a very small but fun part is Dorothy Fielding's Judy Brewster, the mom. I really enjoyed the mom's character here and there. She's kind of a flighty person, but she's also one that kind of like the kids come down and they're fighting over about not having sex because he got distracted. And she just plays it off like, "Are you guys having a lover spat?" It's a fun mom, but a very naive mom too. But I think she's a fun little character, which they can't find anymore. They don't know whatever happened to her. She's actually went missing. Like they don't know
really
what happened. To her.
Missing.
Nobody seems to know. Like she went off the grid.
Oh,
that's interesting.
They don't know how to contact her.
That's more interesting than the character.
Yes, it is. I'm more intrigued by that.
So you didn't like her as the mom?
Wild. Oh,
it's a throwaway character.
It is a throwaway character. I mean, anyone could have played that part.
She's kind of there. I was surprised you brought her up, but
I figured she was the only other character that actually really needed to be brought up because there's not a lot of characters in this movie. I mean, technically, if you include the detective, there's really 8 characters altogether.
Yeah,
in this whole movie.
It's definitely the limited.
You could actually probably make this into a play if you wanted to, with the number of actors that you just need in this movie. And then I think we said this a little earlier. Ted brought this up. It's a very tight movie that doesn't need a lot of extras.
I think it needed more nudity.
More hardcore nudity, right?
Well, we don't have to go like Cinemax, but, just a little more. Just spread it out. Like an Elvira character would have been perfect for this.
So instead of having Peter Vincent, you had Elvira.
There you go. I like that.
I bet you do.
Oh, yeah.
I bet you do.
That would have definitely been a little bit more appetizing for his character to be watching the show.
I wouldn't doubt that Elvira kind of played a little bit of a inspirational part of this. She was doing her Mistress of the Dark thing into the 80s right there. And she was very popular at that particular time. So I wouldn't be surprised.
She was huge.
Yeah, in more ways than one. So I do think having her kind of made sense to have someone like a Peter Vincent, kind of related to horror film addicts at the time.
Well, the 80s were kind of a boon, a resurrection of the horror TV host. My wife loves Svengoolie, and she's loved every iteration of Svengoolie that she's seen. And I know, Ken, that's something the two of you have bonded over because you were a Svengoolie person.
Well,
Unfortunately,
it's not Gone with the Wind, that's for sure.
It's right. Growing up in Southern Illinois, I didn't have Svengoolie, but I had the afternoon horror host on the USA Network. I think his name was Captain USA.
Captain USA.
And he was,
Caveman.
of course, he was like an over-the-top character that would come on and he would tell us different things about them. I think everybody like that's around our ages has memories of somebody like Elvira and now modern time Joe Bob Briggs. And it's a big influence on a lot of horror directors. Rob Zombie has, in most of his movies, there's a horror TV host that's playing on the TV. It's just interesting to see the different iterations of the horror TV hosts. Unfortunately, now with streaming and everything, it's kind of being lost. I always thought that was fun. It was always fun on a Saturday afternoon. It's not in football season and there's nothing on TV on Saturday and you turn on and there's an old horror movie.
Yeah, mine was on Sundays when I came home from church, because that's what you did when you came home from church. You watched horror movies. But as I stated earlier, Svengoolie is probably the number one reason that I got into horror movies to begin with. He's kind of a cheesy kind of guy. He has these little funny bits and things of that nature. And I thought they were fun. I decided to stick around to watch him, and then I got interested in the movies themselves. A good horror host can really bring people into a genre that they maybe would have been in before. Because I wasn't a horror guy very early on. I didn't like to be scared. And so that's why, again, this movie draws me in, because it reminds me of Svengoolie. It reminds me of why I got into horror in the first place. This movie has a special place in my heart.
I guess it's not totally died, because Svengoolie has found a little bit of a resurgence.
Oh, Rich Coase is on every Saturday night.
Yeah, it's on MeTV, which is actually a nationally syndicated station. So
Rich Coase is very popular again.
Unless you have a streaming service to watch TV, and then you can't get it unless you have, I think it's called Friendly TV or something like that. Then you can get it, but
or hook up the old antenna 26.
That's what you got to do, and hope you have a good enough signal.
Can be done.
This movie was very successful. It could have been more successful if it was released around Halloween, like you guys mentioned earlier. But it also had really good reviews. So it had a sequel called Fright Night 2.
Electric Boogaloo.
But unfortunately, Fright Night 2 only had two of the original cast. William Ragsdale playing Charlie and Roddy McDowall coming back as Peter Vincent. Everybody else. Yeah. Everybody else was.
So he really needed the money.
Wow.
Is what you're saying.
People went to go see this movie.
Who else was in Fright Night 2, Electric Boogaloo?
Pretty much nobody that you probably know.
You talk about a sequel. Tom Holland didn't even have anything to do with it, because he said on a podcast that he actually wouldn't mind revisiting Fright Night. Of course, unfortunately, he couldn't bring back Roddy McDowall.
Or the mother, apparently.
Or the mother.
Whoever she may be.
They asked him what he would do, and his idea was that Ed didn't die when he was laying on the floor, because if you notice, he turns back to human.
Yep.
When he's laying on the floor. And the whole idea that he was pitching was that Ed buys the house next door to where Charlie used to live, where Jerry lived, and Charlie finds Ed trying to resurrect Jerry and go from there. But I don't know.
Ed buys the house next door.
Yeah, and he's trying to resurrect him.
Ed is
resurrect Jerry.
But the $8 that he was given to at the beginning.
Ed is dumb as a stump. How would he buy a house?
He's not dumb. Yeah. He's not. He's actually a very smart character, actually.
Okay, he's actually the one that's passing trigonometry.
Right, exactly. So the original ending of this film was Peter Vincent turning into a vampire on Fright Night while they're watching the TV at the end.
Oh, so it's like the Thriller video at the end, right?
Kind of like that. Yeah. Tom Holland wanted Peter Vincent to become a vampire at the end. And the studio executive said, no, we can't do that. We want our good guys to win. Not seem like the bad guys had won, because if Peter Vincent turns into a vampire, technically we got to say that the vampires won, right?
But then you have a sequel.
So that's where the compromise came in with the eyes at the end from the Amityville Horror. Thank you, Amityville Horror, for your eyes. But of course, you have that laugh at the end. You're so cool, Brewster. Again, to not take it so seriously. Unlike Amityville Horror, who makes you think that these red eyes are like the spawn of Satan or something like that.
Yes.
This is played more almost jokingly at the end. The sequel is based off of Jerry had a sister, and his sister is also a vampire, and she's looking to get revenge on these two.
And it's Susan Sarandon.
Funny that Chris Sarandon and Susan Sarandon, I didn't know until we did some research on this that they were married up until, I think it was 79. So he wasn't married to Susan Sarandon at the time that Fright Night was made. But yeah, the second movie bombed at the box office and got mostly negative reviews. I think it's 36% on Rotten Tomatoes.
That's correct. What Amityville is.
Wow. I don't know what that says about Amityville, or what that says about Fright Night, too.
And then there's also a 2011 remake of Fright Night.
Yes, with Colin Farrell.
Colin Farrell's in it, and the late Anton Yelchin, who died a number of years back by being pinned against, I believe, a concrete wall or something like that by his own SUV. That's kind of sad. The movie itself is not bad. It's definitely not as good. It takes itself a little bit more serious than this movie does. You also have McLovin is Evil Ed. So
McLovin, boy, talk about being typecast.
David Tennant plays Peter Vincent.
Tennant, okay.
It's got a very interesting cast. Like I said, I actually liked it, but I didn't love it. It's an okay remake.
Isn't David Tennant Doctor Who?
Yes.
Okay, okay. I could see that.
Yes.
One last thing before we get to our reviews. The music here is really hit and miss. There's real 80s.
It's just like the 1980s, man. Hit or miss.
It's so cheese. But there are bits and pieces of really good songs.
Nightclub music is
Can you get the Fright Night soundtrack? Is that available?
Oh, I'm sure it
actually was a very popular soundtrack.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
However, the final song that plays through the credits is very horrible. And it's by the Jay Giles Band, which was the band for
they actually had a video for a music video for that. It's not good at all.
Definitely not Dokken from
Dream Warriors
on Elm Street 3. Dream Warriors, baby.
Yes, Dokken, I love it.
Loved that video.
Oh,
watched it over and over again
classic
on MTV.
80s metal, man. Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
I actually think I like the score a little bit on this movie. I kind of enjoy it.
No.
So I like it. I think it's because it's an 80s flick. It's an 80s flick that needs kind of that 80s touch, and I think it fits this movie.
It does. It has it. So it is so 80s. Yeah.
But I think it works.
It's nothing tops Dokken, though, baby.
It's not Halloween 3, Season of the Witch.
Yeah.
Happy Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. Damn it, Ted, now I have Dokken in my head. It is a good guitar riff at the beginning of that song. I'll have to watch that video later.
Loved it.
Yeah, let's go into our reviews. Let's kick it off with Ted.
Coming into this movie this week and had never seen it before, it's interesting because I couldn't really put my finger on as to why I have not seen it. Because as far back as I can remember, going through the video store when that was a thing. The box
Yeah, the
always
box
intrigued.
is very, very iconic.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it always intrigued me.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I never picked it up. Here again, I didn't know what I was walking into, but I was pleased that they told me right off the bat, and that I didn't have to discover, a third of the way movie that this is going to be campy. So I respect it on that level, that it comes right out and it lets you know we're not taking ourselves seriously here. You're going to be in for a fun time, not necessarily a scary time. For the most part, I enjoyed the movie. It is exactly what it pretends to be. I agree with Roger Ebert. It wallows in being undistinguished. It is what it is. I do think Roddy McDowall deserves a lot of credit. I enjoyed his character the most. It was a throwback to when I was a kid. Outside of the boobs, I don't know why it's even rated R. Well, because 1985, I don't think they had PG-13 yet.
They did. You're right. No, 86, I think, is when that rolled out.
Yeah. I really did enjoy the movie. It's a movie I probably won't turn on all the time. I don't know if it'll make my Halloween season movie list, but it's definitely a movie I'll watch again. I have no real issue with the movie. For me, it's perfectly average, and that's why I'm going to give it a C+. I actually really like it. It's not one of my favorites.
C+ for really liking it? Man, tell me what you're going to give it if you hated it.
No, it's perfectly average. It delivers exactly what it says it's going to deliver, and it delivers a good time for an hour and 42 minutes. You're not wasting your time by watching it. It's actually a lot of fun. And I think it would be a lot more fun with a group of people. I watched it with my daughter. She thought it was cheesy. She wanted to watch The Exorcist. I said, no, I need to watch Fright Night.
Has she seen The Exorcist?
No, not yet.
Not yet, huh?
Yeah. But
Father of the Year.
C+ is not bad. I mean, it does exactly what it's supposed to do. I can see exactly why Ken's going to give it a higher grade than what I am. It hits him right in the feels. It's not my kind of horror movie. I picked Texas Chainsaw Massacre. In the feels.
Feels? Is that the balls, or what is that?
I guess.
Okay.
Want to talk about my balls?
Well, if you want to talk about your balls, feel free. But this is a family-friendly.
That's a totally different podcast altogether.
Family-friendly podcast. Well, it was. Not anymore.
I recommend it. Honest to God, I recommend watching the movie. It is what it is.
That's what they should have put on the box. Fright Night. It is what it is.
That's my line. That's going to be on my gravestone.
Pretty much. What it is. Right. All right. C+. I really agree with what Ted says. There's really not much more I can add to it, except the only thing I would switch out is I think Chris Sarandon played a much better character in this movie, and I think McDowell was just there for the paycheck. But other than that, it's a fun movie. It is what it is. It doesn't play or pander to something that it's not. It's your typical 80s schlock movie, and I thought it had some pretty funny scenes in it. It just didn't go over the top for me. It was fun, but it wasn't fun. It's not something that I'll probably end up watching again. I'll be honest, I'm like Ted. I saw the box 1,000 times when I would walk into the video store. Never picked this movie up. Couldn't even tell you who was in the movie before Ken showed it to me. Glad I finally have seen this movie, and too bad Sarandon didn't do a few more things besides this and Princess Bride, and I think he's pretty good in this, but I'm giving it a C, a straight C average, which is not bad, but if you like mid-80s schlock, this is it. It doesn't play pretend. It's not scary. I mean, the special effects are pretty weak, but it's exactly what you would expect out of any mid-80s movie. I mean, literally, it's like the mid-80s movie playbook. It played right out of it, except it didn't have any stars in it. Other than that, it played right out of the book.
Roddy McDowall is a star. You have to admit to that.
All right. Yeah, he was a star. If it was 1973, it was okay. Hey, it made
Yeah.
money. It was successful. When this movie came out, I was 11, and I'm not a real horror movie fan, but I don't know how this thing slipped by me. I really did not know the existence of this movie, to be honest with you. Like, if you would have brought up Fright Night, I'd be like, okay.
What's that?
I couldn't tell you the plot. I couldn't tell you who was in it. You show me the video box, and I'd be like, oh, yeah, I know that movie, but I've never seen it. So
When I was little, and going through the thing, the box actually scared me.
yeah, it's good marketing on the box. You would expect it to be more of a Freddy Krueger style movie.
Exactly.
You know, something a little bit more violent. If you look at that R rating, you're looking at it for violent, not nudity.
It needed Dream Warriors.
Dream Warriors. Elvira. Okay. Ken, we know you're going to give it a higher rating, but let's hear what you think of it.
Before I give it a grade here, was McDowell actually really loved playing Peter Vincent, and he actually wanted to do a Fright Night 3. In fact, they were in negotiations with, I think it was called Carloco Pictures, but unfortunately, the chairman that ran that company was murdered by his kids.
McDowell's kids murdered him?
No, Roddy McDowell did not have any kids. Was never married, never had any kids, but was in a relationship with Montgomery Clift. I always thought that was an interesting.
Oh, From Here to Eternity?
Yeah.
As far as the grade goes, I adore this movie. This is one of those movies that I've owned on DVD and Blu-ray and now 4K. Just gave Eric my Blu-ray version, but since he's just like, okay about it.
He's like, I want it back.
I'm going to take it back and give it to Ted, even though Ted only gave it a C+ compared to Eric's C.
I was surprised the thing came out on 4K.
Oh, yeah. It's come out on multiple
times. I bought
times.
it on streaming. Actually, the Blu-ray sold out. The 25th anniversary, it completely sold out in like less than 24 hours.
Yeah, it's a very popular Blu-ray 4K. In fact, the 4K had to get reissued. So I just recently got the reissued version of the 4K in the tin box set. So yay me. Yeah, I know. I'm so special. Don't hate me because I'm beautiful. I enjoy the characters in this movie. I really enjoy Chris Sarandon and Roddy McDowell. These are two people that kind of just stand out in the movie. Nothing against the other ones. They do a very good job in it. But Chris Sarandon's vampire is one of the best vampires that I've watched. It's not like Gary Oldman, and it's not like Bela Lugosi or Christopher Lee. It's its own thing. And I appreciate it.
How dare you leave George Hamilton out of the conversation?
George Hamilton will probably leave himself out of the conversation too. But I like his take on it. I like a vampire who doesn't kill for just killing's sake. But with Roddy McDowell, he just is a perfect choice here for Peter Vincent. As much as I love Vincent Price, I don't think Vincent Price could have done a much better job in this role. I think this is perfectly placed for Roddy McDowell. He can play a coward very easily, but then he could play a strong character as well. And I think we see a little range in here. It's not one of those kind of movies that demand great range, right? But I think he brings like all the things that you need to bring to the character. He's strong, he's scared, but then in the middle, when Evil Ed is dying, he's sympathetic. You could actually see him tearing up a little bit on what's happening to this young man. I kind of really like that. Even though this is a mid-'80s horror cheesy flick, he's still doing what he does best, and that's act. This is something that I watch multiple times a year. It's one of my go-to movies, especially around this time of the year. It's an A- for me. Just have a good time watching a movie and not think too much about it. This is the movie for you. It's a lot of fun. Just want to have a good time. I think this movie will do it for you.
All right. Awesome. Well, we have our ratings across the board here, and I agree with Ken. If you don't take movies seriously, give it a shot. What do you got to lose? Apparently, me and Ted are in the wrong, as opposed to everyone else out there. So, well, tell us a little bit about where they can find us on the old World Wide Web there, Ted.
Well, we can be found on X or Twitter or whatever they're going to call it. We can be found at @hookedon_movies. Come and join the conversation there. Unfortunately, I've been ill, so I haven't been posting a whole lot, but I'm going to start reposting on there as soon as I can. And, whatever podcast version you're listening to, whether it's Good Pods, Apple, Spotify, whatever, if you can, you'd leave us a 5-star review. It helps us get noticed. It helps us get noticed by the metrics, but the best way to promote our podcast is to tell a friend. Word of mouth is the way that podcasts really take off. If you like us, tell a friend, and most likely your friend will probably take a listen.
And what are we doing next, Ken?
The Lord of the Rings trilogy. I know Eric's been dying to do this.
God help us all.
So join us for November, and our buddy Justin is going to be joining us for some of those episodes. He might be here for all three.
I think he's part Hobbit, isn't he?
He is kind of
on his mother's side.
Yeah. And you also could join our Facebook group, Hooked on Movies. We throw trailers out there and some articles about what's going on in the movie world. Feel free to join us and have that conversation. We'll love to have you.
Awesome. Well,
there's only one return, and it's of the Jedi.
I knew he was going to say that. I knew that was coming. Yes. You be sure to bring that up in the first movie. I'm actually looking forward to this one because I'm going to tell you, not my favorite trilogy. Maybe I can be turned like Luke Skywalker was tried to be turned. Or, potentially, it'll be me watching this trilogy, not losing 9 hours of my life because I'm not watching the director's cut.
9 hours of people walking?
Oh, God, don't start.
Even the trees
please.
walked in that movie.
Oh. All right. See, there we go. This will be a fun listen for everyone. Watch me have a mental breakdown, potentially, as I'm watching English people with bad teeth trying to find a little ring. And then things catch on fire, apparently. I don't know. There's a wizard. We'll see. All right, guys. Well, that's all the time we have for this podcast, celebrating our horror movie threesome, if you will. So hope you enjoyed them. And as always, thank you and have a pleasant tomorrow.
We'll see you at the movies.
See you next time on Hooked on Movies.